Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're going to do something a little bit different here today. We're going to review the trailer for the upcoming film Oppenheimer, which is set to come out later this month, late July, I think July 20 something, 21st, 22nd. Anyway, I wanted to review this film because the Manhattan Project and the science surrounding early 20th century physics in the United States and in Europe, across the globe, really, but the Manhattan Project centered in the United States is one of my favorite areas of history to investigate. It's not my area of expertise, but I did do some graduate work in the Manhattan Project, and so I've always loved this time period. Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of historically based movies, not because of my history background and because I think that they're inherently wrong or that they make a lot of mistakes. They oftentimes do, but honestly, generally because I tend to find them kind of boring. Maybe it's because I already know the history. I'm not sure. But we're going to review the trailer for Oppenheimer. Let me know what you think. If you like these sorts of videos, I'm more than happy to review other historically based films. There's one for Napoleon I'm thinking about. But anyway, this is like a star studded cast. I'm sure somebody here is going to be nominated for an Oscar or some kind of acting award. It's pretty impressive who they've casted for this. So let's jump straight into it.
This is a national emergency.
Detonator charge.
Well, the effects are cool. I can tell you that. Christopher Nolan, I mean, come on.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
I wonder if this is. I wonder what portions of the Manhattan Project that they're going to talk about. So, the Manhattan Project, of course, dates to right before the United States enters World War II. So, the United States enters World War II December 7th, 1941. The Manhattan Project actually starts shortly before that in October. It starts on a very small scale. It's not until we get to Oppenheimer that we get like thousands of people working on this sort of thing. But that scene they just showed, I'm wondering if so it starts off at the Chicago Met Lab. It's sort of this makeshift laboratory that was started by Enrico Fermi, the Italian physicist, as well as Leo Szilard, in which they were working on creating a nuclear chain reaction. And they use these lead bricks to kind of cover the core. But anyway, I'm not sure where they're going to start in this film, if they're going to pick up with Oppenheimer's involvement and then move on. Be curious to see how that plays out.
Have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
I believe this is General Groves, of course, Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer being played by Callan Murphy. I'm not sure if I pronounced his first name correctly. I'm sorry, Mr. Murphy. More than welcome to come on the channel and explain it. And then Groves is being played by Matt Damon. I'm curious to see how they're going to portray Groves versus Oppenheimer. That dynamic should be interesting.
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here.
Los Alamos, I take
Secret
it?
laboratory.
Yeah.
Keep everyone there until it's done.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
So this is the part of the trailer that is started to concern me from a historical perspective. So Oppenheimer and Groves have this famous sort of rivalry, I guess you could call it. They had a lot of fundamental disagreements with each other concerning how the Manhattan Project ought to be run. Oppenheimer famously wanted to recruit scientists to carry out the scientific endeavors and the work that was to be done. Groves famously, I can't say famously, it wasn't known until after the project was over, of course, because it was all kept secret. Groves famously did not want to recruit scientists for everything in order to cut down on the cost. So the Manhattan Project, by the way, has two big locations. One that I think is going to be primarily depicted here at the Los Alamos Research Laboratory in New Mexico, and the other one is happening in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is where they're enriching the uranium and the materials used for the bomb. But Groves will carry out sort of an experiment of his own, in which he would recruit essentially high school educated women in order to conduct some of the research and to carry out some of the experiments. And this was Oppenheimer didn't like this because he thought that highly trained scientists ought to be doing this, but Groves proved him wrong. If you look at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the recruitment of what they called the Calutron girls, which were these recently high school graduated girls that Groves hired to run the Calutron machine, Groves proved that the girls were able to do it as effectively, if not better, than these scientists. And as a result, he was able to dramatically cut down on the cost of what they were paying these people, right? Cheaper labor. So I'm curious if that was just kind of a throwaway line, or how that sort of tension is going to be presented, if it's going to be presented at all, because that was one of the big contentious points between those two men. This might be the Met Lab.
Build a town, build it fast.
That's Los Alamos.
If we don't
of
let
course.
scientists bring their families, we'll never get the best.
Why would we go to the middle of nowhere?
They famously allowed the scientists to bring their families. They created essentially these small cities in which people lived and worked.
Who knows how long?
Why? Why? How about because this is the most important thing that ever happened in the history of the world?
That's the other part of the trailer that's concerning, is the depiction of the portrayal of Einstein. Now, again, this could be just something that they put in the trailer to appeal to a mass audience, because let's face it, scientists aren't really, there are not a whole lot of famous scientists, right, in terms of the general population, in terms of mass appeal. But Einstein is without a doubt probably one of the most, if not the most famous scientist. The issue here, why I see this as problematic, is because Einstein had very little to do with the Manhattan Project. Now, he had everything to do with the level of fundamental physics that went into the Manhattan Project. Of course, Einstein revolutionizes physics in the early 20th century. And by the time that the Manhattan Project rolls around, Einstein basically has rock star level status. Shortly after the First World War is when Einstein gets really famous. He kind of goes on this tour of Europe and the United States in the 1920s. Of course, Einstein's theoretical basis of relativity is confirmed in the 20s by English scientists such as Arthur Eddington. Einstein flees Germany in the 1930s due to the rise of anti-Semitism. He kind of sees it coming. He has the level of wealth to kind of get out while he's still able. He goes to, like most of the scientists at the time, like most of the Jewish scientists at the time, flees to the UK, then from the UK to the United States. There's a really great book about this called The Men from Mars. It talks about the academic flight of Jewish intellectuals out of Germany in the 30s. But in terms of the Manhattan Project itself, Einstein is not recruited for the Manhattan Project. The only role that he plays, he is sought out by the scientist Leo Szilard, who has also fled Germany because of anti-Semitism. Szilard seeks out Einstein in order to convince Roosevelt to start the Manhattan Project, because they both were, because Szilard was aware of what the type of weapon the Germans were trying to do. But Szilard was basically an unknown person, and he knew that in order for somebody like the President of the United States to listen to what he was saying, he needed some clout and some weight behind his name. So that's why Szilard goes to the United States. He seeks out Einstein. He drafts this letter. He basically just has Einstein attach his name to it in order to get an audience with the president. But in terms of working on the Manhattan Project itself, Einstein played no part. So I don't know if that was just put in there to draw more audience attention. Hey, Einstein's in the film, or whether or not they're going to try to make it seem like Einstein was working at I hope they don't make it seem like Einstein was working at Los Alamos or Oak Ridge or anything like that, but we will see.
Great improviser, but this you can't do in your head.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world?
Chances are near zero.
Near zero.
What do you want for theory alone?
Zero would be nice.
It was a concern. They didn't know how big the blast would be.
This is a matter of life and death. but I can perform this miracle.
World War II would be over. Our boys would come home.
Trinity test site, I take it.
That's happening, isn't it?
The world
Hmm.
will remember this day. Our work here will ensure a peace mankind has never seen.
Little foreshadowing.
Until somebody builds a bigger bomb.
More foreshadowing. Hydrogen bomb.
You are the men who gave them the power to destroy themselves.
Hmm.
And the world is not prepared.
Hmm.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
21.
Truman needs to know what's next.
2,
What's next?
1.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm glad they included that last bit. A lot of the scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project were extraordinarily concerned with the implications of the Manhattan Project. Many of them opposed the use of the weapon itself once it was constructed and once they realized what exactly the weapon was able to do. Oppenheimer, as well as Bohr, were also concerned with the potential arms race that was going to result from the construction of the atomic bomb. They believed that the newly formed United Nations ought to put a lot of regulations on this and sort of keep this progress and development intact. And a lot of the scientists who worked on this deeply regretted having constructed and participated in the construction of such a weapon. So that the last couple of scenes there makes me think that they're going to get into that a little bit, especially with the expression on Oppenheimer's face and kind of the joint commissions that happen afterwards. So that will be interesting to see where they take that. Anyway, I'm hopefully optimistic about this film, but we will see. Star-studded cast. It's a Christopher Nolan film, so the production quality is absolutely outstanding. I look forward to it. Let me know what you think, what other issues, problems you saw in the trailer, and whether or not you're going to go watch this thing.